Bunjie here is an Excalibur Axiom that I bought back in 2010. It is more than capable of doing the job for all of the big game here in northeastern Pennsylvania. I will happily take a shot at any deer that walks in front of me with this crossbow, and I will get a pass-through with a proper shot. Same thing for bears. I would have no problem shooting a black bear with this and anything smaller than that. I shot wild boars, I've shot a bobcat, I've shot a lot of different animals with this thing. This crossbow is more than adequate for the job. So that's why I say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Stick with what works. Bunjie here works, and I'm not going to upgrade until I have to. The original Bunjie, for when it absolutely, positively has to be there overnight. That was a joke about how slow the crossbow is, right? I was wrong in that clip. It's that simple. It's that simple. I love this crossbow as much now, if not more, than I did years ago when I made that video. A little bit of a backstory for those of you just joining Death by Bunjie, just joining us for Crossbow Appreciation Month. This is Bunjie, and I have hunted with this crossbow now for 15 years. The OB. The original Bunjie never lets me down. I might let the original Bunjie down, but the OB does not let me down. That's a fact. 15th year with this crossbow. It is a 2010 Excalibur Axiom. Bought it way back in the day, hunted with it for 12 straight years with nothing else. This is the crossbow that got me to give up hunting with a rifle. I enjoyed and appreciated this crossbow so much that I started this channel, that I wrote a book about it, that I wrote another book about it, and it really hooked me on crossbow hunting. I love this crossbow. I have a sentimental attachment to it. I will never part with it. It is my best friend on the planet. Friend of Bunjie, Eric, was here yesterday from Dual Thread Outdoors. He shot this crossbow, and he said this is the most pimped out crossbow he ever saw. It does have the bubble level, the Burris Oracle X Scope, a remote control for the scope, all that good stuff. The fancy string, you know, you got to have the fancy string and the cocking rope to match the fancy zombie slayer arrows that you use, that kind of thing. But this crossbow is not a modern crossbow. Modern technology is better than this, right? It's a 2010 Excalibur Axiom. It's not even really the top of the line from 2010. I'm not going to stop hunting with it, but it's not going to be my only crossbow. It's not my primary crossbow. It's not my go-to crossbow anymore. But this crossbow still can kill deer. I made other improvements to it with heavier arrows, that sort of thing. But the reality is the speed and size of this crossbow are such that it really isn't the best choice. To say that this crossbow is good enough to hunt with in the modern era, that's like saying that it's good enough if you don't get a pass-through. It's good enough if the deer duck the string. It's good enough if the deer runs off with your arrow. Like, that's acceptable for us as crossbow hunters, which it really isn't. To say that this crossbow is good enough in the modern era is to say that it's acceptable to limit your broadhead choices and have to use a fixed blade broadhead, perhaps. It's like saying that it's okay as a crossbow hunter that you have to limit your shots to 15, maybe 20 yards. Size really is a problem with a crossbow like this, and if to say that this crossbow is good enough to continue hunting with as your primary crossbow, like, you know, that's like saying it's okay that deer will see this in front of you when you're hunting. Contrast that with a more modern crossbow like this. Look at the difference in footprint. You think it would be as easy for a deer to spot this as it would be the OB? Those of you who are longtime friends of Bunjie, you know and don't question the fact that I love this crossbow, of course. But you also understand, you've seen my crossbow journey trying to get penetration with this, trying to get enough momentum where deer don't run off with your arrow. As a crossbow hunter in 2024, when we're making this video for Crossbow Appreciation Month, pass-throughs are mandatory, right? Deer running off with an arrow is not acceptable. Spining deer because they duck the string, not acceptable in the modern era of hunting with crossbows with reasonable shots. If I wanted to have limited broadhead options, if I wanted to have deer ducking the string, if I wanted to shoot this slow, right, I would use a compound bow. Those of you who are longtime friends of Bunjie also know that this isn't a channel about the latest and greatest. In fact, it's one of my personal rules for crossbow hunting is that I try to avoid the latest and greatest. Avoid the latest and greatest. Don't feel like you have to have the fastest crossbow on the market. There's absolutely no reason why that would be the case. I want tried, true, and tested. This is definitely tried, true, and tested, but the 400 feet per second-ish crossbows in this day and age are also tried, true, and tested. If you're new to crossbow hunting and you're looking for a crossbow, you want something that's shooting around 400 feet per second out of the box. That gives you 0.7 slugs of momentum or more, puts you in that category where you are going to get the pass-throughs most of the time, if not all of the time, unless you really have a catastrophically bad shot. You really don't have the limitations on the broadhead choices. You can take shots out to 30 yards. That's the modern era of crossbows, and that's what we're looking for. This crossbow, not going anywhere, but it is not in competition with modern crossbows. I talk about this at length in my book, The Death by Bungie Crossbow Method, my second book, if you're interested in those things. The audio book, as you know, is now available on Audible. Go ahead and get that off Amazon.com. But what you will see is the rule of 400 in that book. And what I talk about when we talk about these 400 feet per second crossbows is you're really at the point where you got that 0.7 slugs of momentum. It puts you in a category of archery that the world has always wanted but never experienced until now. And now you can go to Walmart and buy something that puts you in that category. Don't give up on that. As a modern crossbow hunter, I think that is the perfect category to be in, right? That 400 feet per second or so. The Enforcer, shooting 360 feet per second, but with a pretty heavy arrow, like 480 grains or so. Pretty sweet. That gives you all that pass-through power, plenty of speed to get me there, to get this arrow to a deer before it ducks at 30 yards or so. And I have all the modern conveniences of a crossbow with this, plus the small package, right? I've talked at length in Death by Bungie about smaller, faster, lighter, denser, cheaper, right? The book that I read a few years back. That's what technology is. That's what we look for. That defines improvements in technology. Smaller, faster, lighter, denser, cheaper. This crossbow is faster than the 2010 era crossbows. This crossbow is smaller. It may not be lighter, but it isn't exceptionally heavier either. It's denser, definitely denser, because it has more features. That's what we're talking about with denser. It's got a fancy scope on it that has a rangefinder built in. That's something that I think will become a mandatory piece of equipment down the road, and then you'll be looked at as an oddity if you don't use one. And we're a few years away from that, but that's a fact. New technology gives us the enclosed barrel so that we don't have a lot of arrow flex as the arrow leaves this crossbow. It improves accuracy. Timing is not an issue with this modern crossbow because it's pretty much locked down. The entire thing is serving, it's just servings. That modern crossbow does not have to be the Enforcer or one like it. It can be something else of your choosing. Recently, I got together with a bunch of crossbow enthusiasts, watched those videos. We'll be talking about that experience throughout Crossbow Appreciation Month this year. But shooting crossbows, newer crossbows like this, and some older crossbows too, was a lot of fun. And I urge you to do that as well. Go to your local shops and try out those crossbows. Go to your friend's house and shoot those crossbows. The Enforcer, frankly, I got into this crossbow simply because a buddy of mine let me shoot his, and just carrying it. This one is sweet, let me tell you what.
I can tell you put it on the 60 frames per second here.
Oh, of course, yeah. You got to have 60 frames per second with a sweet crossbow like this. I was in love with this scope before that, but when I carried his crossbow, it was like, man, it just fits perfect, right? And that's the definition of a modern crossbow. That's what we want. If we can improve, we definitely want to do that. Leave me some comments, your thoughts on this. Be respectful. But leave me your thoughts on this. This is Crossbow Appreciation Month, and we're going to be doing the comments. I'm going to be on there with you. We'll be talking about this and have a dialogue about these various concepts. Thank you very much for tuning in. Until next time, all hail Bungie. And the Enforcer.